Welcome everybody. Welcome back to Channel 9 Live here at Build. We are middle of the afternoon, late afternoon of day 2 now. I am happy to once again be joined by Mark Harsh, as well as a new guest of mine. I know you were on earlier, but Scott Hunter from Dotnet. And we've got some representation from Windows here as well from
The Scott Hunter.
The Scott Hunter, yes. As we learned, we were just talking about alias. Anyhow, we won't get into that. Long story at Microsoftisms. But so welcome back. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for having it. Topic du jour is .NET, all about .NET.
Yeah.
Great announcements today that Kevin shared about .NET Core. Why don't you recap? What are the highlights, Scott?
The big things are we're bringing WinForms and WPF to .NET Core. So the way I like to say it is I was talking in my session on Monday, and I was telling developers, it's like, you know, some of you might not feel like we've loved you a lot the last couple of years. We've talked about some of the newer tech, but we've not talked about some of you that are on some of the older tech. And I want to let you know that it's okay to be on the older tech. We love the older tech, and we want to make any of the tech for building desktop apps on Windows awesome.
I think that's great. So let's rewind just a second, though, because maybe I am a WPF developer. I've been doing WPF or Windows Forms for a very long time. I don't even know what .NET Core is. Like, why should I care that this is a big deal?
Yeah, so let's roll back and talk about .NET Core. So .NET Core came out a couple years ago when we were trying to reimagine server workloads. And in the server world, things had changed, meaning that Linux had popped up, containers had popped up, open source was really something that was pushing against the web technologies. And we knew to be successful in the web tech in servers in the future, we had to support all of those things. And so we kind of reimagined what we call .NET Core 1.0. It only ran the web workload, ASP.NET and Entity Framework Core. It had a very small set of APIs, but it addressed those needs and started this path of having a fully open source cross-platform .NET. And then we moved to, last year we released .NET Core 2.0. And for .NET Core 2.0, the feedback we had from customers was, .NET Core 1's great, but it's hard for me to port my apps because it's a very small piece of the .NET framework.
Right.
And so we're like, yeah, that's a problem, but the problem's bigger than that. We have UWP, we have .NET Framework, we have Xamarin. How do we make the APIs across all those different .NETs very similar? And so we created something called .NET Standard, and with it we brought a ton of APIs back. So .NET Core 2 was about making it easier to move your existing .NET Framework code to .NET Core. And now we're announcing .NET Core 3, where we bring WinForms and WPF to this. Now, I still haven't answered your question, which was, why, if you're a WPF developer, why would you care? The biggest thing that .NET Core brings is it was designed from day one to be totally side by side. And so one of the challenges that when we talk to our customers is, hey guys, can you quit changing .NET Framework, because every time a Windows update happens or a security patch happens, my apps start breaking and I have no control over this. Can you help us out?
Right.
That happened on the web first. So when we did .NET Core 1.0 for the web, it was trying to solve that exact same problem. I had a customer come to me one day and they said, Scott, we have 35 web apps on a server and we want to use async await in our newest app. So is it safe for us to put .NET Framework 4.5 on that server? And I'm like, yeah, it's safe, but I can't guarantee you that all of your apps will still work. So Scott, what should you do? And I'm like, well, make a new server and put the new app there, and then migrate apps slowly to this.
Yeah. And not a scalable solution.
Not a scalable solution. And .NET Core really addresses that by letting you have as many of those things on the servers you want, and you can set the rule for each app. You can say this app is supposed to float to the next version. This app is locked to this version. And even stronger, you can say this app actually has a copy of .NET Core inside of its folder and is completely self-contained.
Really isolated.
Completely isolated. So we're bringing that exact capability to the desktop frameworks. And the demos we did today and yesterday were one of my favorite features to show was we showed a bundler where you could decide to publish your desktop application. We take WinForms, in this case it was a WinForm app with a Telerik control and .NET Core. We put all those into a folder. We then tree shake the assemblies you're not using to make it get a little bit smaller, and then we zap the whole thing up into a single exe that you can then copy. And part of the demo was I put that on a memory stick, grabbed a laptop out of the audience, and showed that a laptop with nothing installed on it, this app would run perfectly fine.
Completely isolated without having to install a new update of any framework or anything like that.
Exactly. That's benefit number one. Benefit number two is you get what we call Core FX. Core FX is the BCL that lives in .NET Core. And over the last 3 or 4 years since we've been open sourced, with .NET Framework, we really have to be very careful about what we change in .NET Framework, because if I make a bug fix in the BCL, or I change the behavior just slightly, who knows how many apps might break. And so because of that, the BCL in .NET Framework is it doesn't change much.
Right.
With .NET Core, we've actually had, because of its open source nature, 2 things have happened. One is we've taken bug fixes that we would never get to, because it's like, oh yeah, that is a bug, but of the 5,000 bugs we have, that's 4,000.
Priority and resources.
Priority resources,
Yeah.
and so we don't fix all those things. Sometimes they're performance fixes, and so you're going to get the latest CLR that we built. And so, in the sample we showed this morning, the WinForm app running on .NET Core was twice as fast as the WinForm app running on .NET Framework.
I think it was even faster than that.
It might be a little faster than
Like
that.
200 milliseconds versus 550.
Yeah.
It was quite a bit faster.
It's pretty amazing. So,
But we can't bring that to .NET Framework because I might break something. In .NET Core,
Compatibility.
it's compatibility.
Yeah.
So you're going to get a newer, faster, more up-to-date BCL that can change faster because of the side-by-side nature of the framework. And those are the big
benefits.
you're going to get.
Don't
Awesome.
forget about the size benefits for the linker.
Oh yeah, the size. I mean, we showed today a WinForm plus Telerik plus .NET Core app that was about 66 megs. And by the way, when I first did it, I'm like, that's not very good. But actually, our linker text, we have it turned, it's not very aggressive right now. If you build a UWP app today, when you publish that to the store, we really tree shake the heck out of that thing, and to the point the app might not run. The lessons we learned from that effort have been put into this linker, so now we actually link very gently. And if you want to make the app smaller, we give you the dials. We'll give you the dials to turn it down even more. We know we can get that app. I'm sure we can pull another 10 or 20 megs out of that app. I'm going to guess before we're done.
Right.
And having a 40 megs self-contained desktop app
Not
doesn't
anywhere,
seem like
yeah. With the framework that you need, right? With the
completely
dependencies.
self-contained. It
Yeah.
does not depend on anything else on the box at all. Nothing else being installed will break it. I think that's compelling.
It's pretty fantastic. So Mike, to maybe overstate the obvious, so what are the benefits to the Windows developer, right? You as the owner of the Windows SDK, how does this help the UWP and Windows developer?
Well, so I think Scott really hit the nail on the head. The problem that he talked about having, I have 5, 10, 15 apps running on a server, and I want to, use a new feature or security patch. Is it going to destabilize the rest of my server? That's really magnified with client apps. Like we have some partners, customers that have, thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of .NET desktop apps in their ecosystem, and they'll have hundreds on a machine at a time. So in order to update that machine, they have to go test 1,000, at least a couple hundred apps before they can update that particular machine. And a lot of the times, as Scott is, I'm sure, very, very aware, we have a pretty high compat bar for .NET Framework, but still, a lot of these client apps we never see, right? They live behind the firewall. We get no compat data on them. We get no signal and telemetry from those machines, and so we don't know if we break them or not. And so, the result is that there's a lot of compatibility challenges that happen. There's a lot less of an option. Do I upgrade a server or not? Especially with Windows 10, as we're rolling out a new version of .NET every 6 months, you get a lot less of an opportunity to say no to a version of .NET. So this is really becoming an essential thing to make sure that Windows as a service updates every 6 months of Windows can work for our enterprise customers.
In the past, I'm sure you guys are both aware of this. In the past, it used to be you might be afraid to use a new feature because you have to go ask IT to go upgrade the .NET Framework in the organization.
Yep.
This removes all of that as well. If you are running in an organization that's really controlling, now you can go take advantage of the latest feature of the latest .NET immediately without having to wait for your IT department to push some huge update all around, whether it's a version of Windows or a version of .NET.
That's a great point, because often as a developer, you'll have finer grained control over what's running on a server versus running on all your clients, right? IT typically controls all your clients, where as a developer, you typically have more control over what's on a server. So it kind of becomes even more essential from a desktop perspective.
Yeah, I want to dig in on that in a second. Just want to remind people that watching online to make sure that we are live. You feel free to sign in and ask questions to Scott and Mike as we talk about all things .NET and Windows development. Make sure you ask those questions. So as we think about what you just said, both of you, about compatibility and being able now to really control you as a client developer and shipping things. Are gone the days that we're actually shipping .NET Framework on client operating systems? Do we need to do that anymore? Is that...
You want to take it? I'm happy to take that one.
Go ahead, Scott.
The answer to that is .NET Framework will always be a part of Windows and will always be a part of the client platform, and it has to be. For, once again, the back compatibility you just talked about, lots of Windows, actually, lots of stuff built into Windows today uses .NET Framework. If it's not there, then those apps are not going to run. The built-in apps to Windows are not going to run. We also don't want to break the compatibility with any of the ecosystem that's out there today. So .NET Framework will be a part of Windows as long as there is a Windows, is what I like to tell customers.
Great to hear.
It's not going away.
Great to
You
hear.
should not feel like, I would also, another question comes up is, do I have to move to .NET Core?
As a WPF
As a WPF developer, and I would say, no, you don't. I talk to lots of enterprises, they have lots of apps that they still use, but they're not actively developing. If you're doing that, stay where you're at. If you only move if you want to take advantage of the side-by-side, the new APIs, being on the bleeding edge, that's when you should move.
Deployment concerns.
Deployment concerns.
Yeah.
But if you have great apps that already work, and you're just doing light maintenance on them, you should not feel motivated that you have to do something. That thing's not going to go away. You don't have to worry about moving off of it. It's not like we're going to stop supporting that in 2 years and you have a 2-year window to move. You can stay there forever.
Yeah, I mean, realistically speaking, the value benefit of .NET Core is the antithesis of that idea, right? It's that you don't have to do work to move an app forward, right? Unless you really need to do it. And so if an app is working great as it is, why spend any energy on it?
Exactly.
So let's talk about the, so as we're sitting here talking about WPF and Windows Forms are now a part of .NET Core 3, or the plan for .NET Core 3. What exactly does that mean? Because WPF has and Windows Forms, right, have some pretty deep dependencies on Windows. So .NET Core as a story has a promise of running everywhere. So help me understand, is WPF now on my Mac OS?
So the way I would answer that is .NET Core is our open source cross-platform .NET base. And we're not actually putting WinForms and WPF into .NET Core. They will be we don't know what the name's going to be yet. Right now we're kind of throwing around a term like Windows Desktop Pack. It's basically libraries that you can run on top of .NET Core.
I see.
Obviously these libraries, as you said, WinForms depends heavily on HWind, and WPF depends heavily on DirectX 9. Those are
very Windows
specific techs, and you'd have to emulate one of those things super well on another platform for those things to run on it. So it's a Windows Desktop Pack that sits on top of .NET Core. .NET Core will still remain the cross-platform open source tech.
And are we thinking that the pack mechanism is this like I just add a NuGet package to get my
it'll be something. It'll be something like
that.
It won't be a NuGet package. It'll be something different. We want I'm going to bleed into a change that we want to make elsewhere in the platform. Right now, if you're a .NET Core 1 user or a .NET Core 2 user, we're delivering our own frameworks via NuGet. We'd like to move a little bit away from that. We'd like to have the default, I want to build an app, not require NuGet restores. We want NuGet restores to really be for third-party components that you bolt on, or SDKs or stuff.
Right.
Right now, we're kind of making you pay a tax. We're making development slower by actually making ASP.NET and EF be these package graphs. And so you're going to see us in the .NET Core 3 world, ASP.NET Core, EF Core, WinForms, WPF will all be some new packaging model that only is for core pieces that we build.
So one of the things, Mike, that I know, having spent time in UWP, is when let's say I write a UWP app and I reference, library, NuGet package, foo.dll version 1.0. You also have written an application that uses foo.dll version 1.0. Both of those are installed on the machine. We don't really have two copies of that DLL, right? I mean, we're able to kind of symlink, or I don't know what the exact mechanism is.
So you're actually touching. There's a bunch of packaging technology that's in the artist formerly known as Apex, now known as MSIX packaging. So effectively, that system that's built into the operating system knows how to find duplicate binaries, regardless of if an app knows about another app that uses it. So basically, the installer system knows if it's got the exact same binary that's in 2 different packages, and only copies one version on. Another thing that technology we have, which we'll probably leverage for .NET Core, is this thing of idea of a framework package.
Yeah, that's
so basically, the framework package lets you have system code. Typically, it's only used for Microsoft packages at this point, and that multiple apps can reference, but can still be updated in line. And so you can effectively deliver these things that are side by side, but if there's and there's only one copy of it that every app uses, and so you get the size savings. But if there is a security issue that's a really hot issue, you can go roll that fix out and to touch one place and have all the other apps get fixed by it. So you kind of get the best of both worlds from an isolation, but also an updatability and size wins.
And that's kind of where I was going with the next question is like, so as I do the side by side, and as I have benefit from this value proposition of taking .NET Core 3 and my Windows Forms app and deploying them, not having to worry about IT update things, do I also get the benefit of that model where someone else in IT is using that same version, but now I haven't taken 2 of the same core packages with me that they basically reference from one.
We do support a globally installed .NET Core today. So you can have either an app local copy of .NET Core or a global copy of .NET Core.
Okay.
You can have multiple copies of the global copy of .NET Core. We do this today for the server. Obviously, your server, you don't want to have, I would hope you don't need to have 5 versions of .NET Core. You have 5 different apps using different versions, but it's under your control. You can decide how many global versions you want to have. And we do have the ability to do hot fixing on a particular global version as well. Once again, that would be under your control, not our control.
Right.
There are special folders you can drop stuff to make things happen, to patch stuff.
Okay.
So what I like to say is, instead of us saying it's some magic Windows update thing, now it's you have the control to do it at your pace.
That's great. Let's take some questions from the online audience here. So Matthew Kelly is asking.
You missed the last question, which was a good question.
It was a good question. I think it might scroll up. What about security updates to the framework? Won't baking the framework into your binaries create servicing issues? I think you just touched on that.
I did touch on that. Yeah, you're going to have 2 choices. One is you can actually bake the framework into your application. If you do that, then it's up to your IT department to push a new version of the application. This is where the Windows Store model works really well. Imagine today, if a native exe is busted, what do? You push a new one into the store, and it drops on everybody's machines. So you can make that choice, or you can use the globally installed framework and patch the globally installed framework. So these mechanisms still exist.
Good options. Okay, I think this was the question that we were talking about. Manfred is asking, support for WPF from .NET Core on desktop is an amazing improvement and much needed step. Is there hope to see a cross-platform .NET Core UI stack that works with .NET Core on any platform that Core runs on at the same point in the future? Lots of .NET Core statements there.
Can I take that one?
Go for it.
So Manfred is one of many customers who have asked for the idea of, let's say maybe it's something that's based on .NET, maybe it's take UWP cross-platform, but we've had lots and lots of customers ask for
Xamarin Forms cross-platform.
Yes, exactly. For a really good story where you can have a cross-platform UI framework that really ties in with a bunch of different app models and can kind of really be I don't want to say Silverlight because it's not going to run on a browser, but something similar to that where you really do have a kind of model that you can take code and UI technologies packaged together and move them in a pretty portable way. I will say that the change that we've had recently in the management structure in Windows, where we're now kind of lined up, under Scott Gu and Jason Zander, those folks really do understand, developers' needs deeply and really understand the kind of cross-platform world that a lot of developers live in today, and they're also very customer-focused. So I'm very enthusiastic that is a space we'll be investing some energy in the next few Windows releases, but. That's about all I can say right now.
All right.
I was going to say, I add one thing to that. One of the things the ASP.NET team's been doing is this Blazor project, which actually runs .NET Core in the browser using WebAssembly. And Mike and I have been salivating that some format of that plus UWP.
Who knows? Maybe some sort of
UI
UI stack.
Crazy there, but
yeah.
As you said, we'd love to do something there. We just have to figure out what Microsoft's overall cross-platform story is going to be.
That sounds good. So when we think about cross-platform too, and actually, one thing we didn't mention, like for people who don't know, .NET Core is open source, right?
Yeah.
The core that we talked about before. So as we think about that the context of that cross-platform question, but specifically, the WPF and Windows Forms desktop packages, and we're saying those run on Core now. Does that mean WPF and Windows Forms are open source?
They are not open source today, but Mike and I would both love for them to be open source. We really think that it's where developers are today. And as we talked about earlier, these technologies depend on HWinds and DX9s. Yep. I don't feel if we actually open source them, we've given something away. And if you did, it would look like a Windows app on a Mac anyways. It would not look like a native Mac app. So
yeah, I mean, the open source is really about giving. If you look at some of the benefits and contributions you guys have had on .NET Core,
we get performance fixes.
Exactly.
We get bug fixes that don't meet our bar because they're.
Yeah, I mean, you basically unblock the community from helping themselves in some of these key areas that, I mean, it's technology that literally hundreds of thousands of applications and enterprises rely on. And if customers need to be able to fix a bug or kind of get ahead of a change,
copy a control and then modify the control a little bit.
Yeah, they can get ahead of that and do that themselves.
I'd love to give them that power.
And there's tons of benefits for that. So as Scott mentioned, we've been discussing this actually pretty actively with management on both the Windows side and the .NET side, and we'll see where it goes.
So I'm hearing a stay tuned message here.
Yeah.
All right, let's take some more questions. Julian is asking, as many Microsoft SDKs are still .NET Framework, it makes it complicated to move to .NET Core in these cases. Are there plans to provide those in .NET Core as well, using example Dynamics 365 SDK as an example?
I've not seen that SDK, so I can't guarantee that it would work, but one of the things that was part of the .NET Core 2 wave was .NET Standard 2.0, which brought a ton more APIs into .NET Core. And most of the time you'll find that the existing code you have will just run on .NET Core because the APIs are there, and we don't have the best tooling around this yet. But what we want is you can actually reference that SDK if the APIs required for that SDK actually exist. The code will just run. It doesn't. You don't have to recompile code against .NET Core for it to run on .NET Core. So with .NET Standard, the idea is, if the platform you has enough APIs, the code should just run. And we have a tool. You can Google for the Net Portability Analyzer, and that will tell you, point it to the assemblies for the Dynamics 365 SDK.
And what profiles you want to target.
And what profiles you want to target, and it will tell you if the APIs exist in that profile. If they exist, the package will just work.
And I think we've seen a lot of internal efforts as well to further evangelize .NET Core even internally to all our developer platforms as well.
More, I would say .NET Standard.
.NET Standard,
We've gone through and fixed all the Azure SDKs. All the Azure SDKs at this point are .NET Standard 2 compliant, which means whether you call them from Xamarin, you call them for .NET Framework, you call them for .NET Core, they will just work.
And in fact, you guys did a lot of work for UWP to support .NET Standard 2.
Yep, we released that last year.
Which is a huge thing for UWP because a lot of UWP feedback was, I have .NET code that uses these APIs that don't exist anymore in the UWP world.
Yeah, the feedback was I miss my APIs.
And,
bring them back.
.NET Standard support for UWP brought those APIs back.
Yeah.
So we're trying to make, there's too many .NETs, we agree, and we're trying to make the code, the API experience across them the same.
I mean, what was the compat number that Emo calculated on how many .NET or how many NuGet packages are
about
compatible
80% of NuGet.org was compatible, and the stuff that wasn't compatible was referencing WPF or WinForms or something that
was a UI stack.
It was a UI stack.
Yeah. All right, let's. Big question here. Salman is asking. Say I'm on Windows 10 machine with VS 2017. I do a file new web app .NET Core project. Can I simply publish it on a server running Windows Server 2012, but this server box doesn't have any .NET Core stuff installed on it? Do I need an IT staff before I publish anything?
And
I think I understand the question.
The answer to that would be no. So especially with, as we said before, we
have our parade, Scott.
We have the choice to let you publish .NET Core inside your actual application. So in the case here, and this actually, the VS that we just released this week, 15.7, there's now a checkbox. When you're publishing a web app, click the Advanced button. It'll bring up a dialog box, and one of the options there is to be framework dependent or independent. And if you are, we'll copy the actual framework into the application.
Like a bin deploy?
And it's a bin deploy.
Okay.
and you're pretty much good to go.
Okay.
That said, there is one more thing. There is one small piece of IT that you want to do on the box. There is a module that you have to install into IIS for IIS to be able to host .NET Core.
I see.
So you have to add the one module, but you don't have to put .NET Core on the box or anything
You
like that.
have one call to IT.
Yes,
One call to IT, yeah. All right, a few more minutes left. Let's see some more questions here. If somebody, Andy is asking, if somebody wanted to eventually use the UWP controls in WPF, do you have to move to Core in order to do this?
What a great discussion. So we talked about that in the session with Joe Stegman earlier today. Kevin demoed it in the keynote this morning. Basically, this is the technology that Kevin announced called UDP XAML Islands. And so effectively what this is a new API in Windows which lets you expose a UDP control as an HWint. And so if you have a WPF app or a WinForms app, you have an HWint host that you can basically drop that into. And so that was actually demoed a couple places in the keynote this morning. I showed some demos. Actually, Scott and I both showed some demos in our session earlier today. So that's coming in the next Windows update, which is coming
After the last one.
The fall, right?
we can't say the fall because
right.
that's so North American focused. Scott, why are you?
I'm hurting you, yes.
It's autumn in some places, Scott.
I know.
We're shipping more Windows later this year. It'll be in that one.
You go skiing in Australia right now, so.
Okay, so similar. So the islands approach is the kind of the technology that we're enabling to do that.
Yes,
But
and
it doesn't care about framework or core.
Yes, exactly. That was the rest of the
It doesn't care
answer.
about Core.
We showed a demo today where I took one of Scott Hanselman's old
WPF apps.
Baby
WPF
Smash.
apps, Baby Smash.
Yeah.
That was running on .NET Framework, running XAML Islands to bring a touch control in, so it works everywhere.
That's
Yep.
great. All right, we got one more minute left. One more question let's take from Lewis here. Does .NET Core remove any need of obfuscation?
Nope.
No.
It doesn't change. It doesn't change that. The
Doesn't
reality.
change .NET.
The reality is .NET's .NET. So we're still shipping an IL, and somebody could reverse engineer the IL if they wanted to. And so if you're shipping something outside of your enterprise, you likely would want to obfuscate it if you care about the IP.
Okay.
And I mean, even if we did some investment, to make a really aggressive, ahead of time compilation story to make it all precompiled to C++, like, having worked in the Xbox team with games developers, that's still not obfuscated enough for some scenarios. So it really depends on how much obfuscation you care about.
Great. 30 seconds left. What should we leave thinking about this announcement?
Start with you.
I'm just really excited that we're actually solving that very tangible customer problems that we've been asked about, and really giving kind of a breath of fresh air and new life into desktop development on Windows. I'm excited about that.
If I was going to say anything, I would just say, if you're a WinForm or WPF developer, we love you, and we're building awesome stuff for you to move your apps to in the future.
Awesome. I love that message. Be sure, thank you guys for joining us here on
Thanks,
Channel
Tim.
9 Live. Be sure to check out the keynote again for some great demos. Both of your guys' sessions, both on Future.net. I think you had one with Scott Hanselman, right?
Yep.
And then you guys had the session specifically about .NET Core and
Modernizing
desktop apps. So check those out on Channel 9 later. Be able to, if you weren't able to attend in person or watch them online, be able to check them out later for more kind of a double click through of what we just talked about here.
Cool.
Sound good?
Thanks, Tim.
And we'll be looking forward to future announcements. Really excited to be a good time to be a .NET developer, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
Not a bad time.
Not a bad time. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for more Build Live coming up next.